Good morning and welcome to our third lesson of meditation from Sinai. This lesson is titled Mastermind. Okay, so this discussion today is going to be somewhat of a continuation of last week's discussion, but even if you weren't there last week, this is something we could understand and benefit from today as well. So just to kind of recap, in lesson one, the first discussion we had in this course, we spoke about the idea of mind control, that we have the power to control the thoughts that come into our mind by redirecting our thoughts to positive thoughts, and that could actually control our emotions, our feelings, our mood. Last week, we began the discussion of a deeper, real, what we called cognitive meditation. To meditate on an idea, on a concept, with proper deep meditation, where it becomes real. You kind of experience it, you feel it. And we started the discussion in regards to spirituality, and where spirituality is not just the idea of the spirit over the body, over the material, the physical, but it was the idea of the awareness of the divine and the awareness of godliness in this world. And we spoke the idea that God is everywhere, all around us. You know, they say that there was a cafeteria in the school, in the elementary school. And the teacher put a note by the basket of apples and said, and he wrote, "Please only take one apple. God is watching." Okay, well, on the other counter, one of the children put a note by the big container of jelly beans. And he wrote, "Take as many as you want. God is watching the apples." So obviously, God is not just limited to one space, and we're going to expound on this idea, the idea that godliness is everywhere. But before we get there, let's talk about meditation for a moment, because this is the course of meditation. So the idea of meditation, we mentioned last week, in Hebrew, the word for cognitive meditation, to meditate on a concept, is the word hitbonenut. And if you look at page 81 in your textbooks, figure 3.1, you have the word in Hebrew hitbonenut, and you see the etymology of the word. It has actually two meanings. On the left side, you see the word bina, which means to understand, to comprehend, to contemplate. You contemplate, you have a better understanding of something. It becomes more real. But there's a second root word over here with the same few words, same few letters, and that is the word binyan. Binyan means to build, a building. Wow, what a beautiful binyan, what a beautiful building, a structure, right? To build. Hitbonenut, when we meditate on the concept, we're not only better understanding it, but we are also building it. What does that mean? That when we meditate, when we experience, it's not only to experience spirituality or even to have a peak spiritual moment, but when we meditate on something, when we are mitbonen on something, we are shaping the way we think. We are shaping our minds. We are building our minds, right? We are living with this divine consciousness. And we will see how when we have this approach to hitbonenut, it is actually becomes very personal, very empowering. It shapes the way we see the world. And what we're going to discuss today, we're going to sheer ideas that we could actually meditate on. And even if we already know some of these things, but the more we meditate, it really shapes the way we see things. So it's building ourselves, it's building our viewpoint, it's building our perspective, even when we're not consciously meditating on this concept, but it's there because we have contemplated on it so many times. So today we're going to discuss three main points. Point number one is that how God is found in the details. Point number two is how everything is done by God's will. Everything is for a purpose. And point number three is really, I think, the most aha moment of the class, and that is that every individual idea, every individual movement in this world is not just a independent movement, but it is something that is part of the larger picture of creation, which hopefully we'll get to towards the end of the discussion today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to share it. Okay, so we open up with text 2. Text 2 brings the idea of last week's discussion. The idea that every single creation, every single physical item, whether it is a human being, an animal, a vegetation, or even an inanimate item, which seemingly is lifeless, everything has a life. Everything has a spiritual energy, and not just a spiritual energy, it has a divine energy, right? So seemingly, when we talk about this divine energy that gives it life, oftentimes we use the analogy of electricity, right? You can have a device, you have a phone that's lifeless, right? How many phones do you have in your drawer that's lifeless, right? All your old phones. One day we'll fix it. One day we'll find the right charger. One day we'll get a new battery. You have a lifeless device. You add electricity, you charge it, it becomes alive. It lights up. There are apps. It works. It makes noise. You can call people, right? It's a functioning device. So seemingly, you could use this analogy of electricity to the electricity of the world, the life force that keeps it alive, that keeps it here. But truthfully, this analogy is inaccurate. It's inaccurate. Why is that? Let's talk about electricity for a moment. Is there a difference between the electricity that goes into a refrigerator and the electricity that goes into a vacuum cleaner, a laptop, a light bulb, right? The electricity itself is the same. It's the same current, maybe more and less, but it's the same, right? Nothing changes. In fact, it all circulates, right? It kind of goes in from here, goes into there, right? It's all the same. It's a beautiful innovation of energy that was discovered however many years ago, and this kind of puts energy, life into different devices. But the life, the energy, has nothing to do. Doesn't know the device. You talk to the energy. So you talk to electricity. What are you doing now? I don't know. I'm giving light. I'm giving energy. To what? I don't know. What is this function of this machine? I don't know. Right? It's foreign to it. Because it has nothing to do with it. It has no consciousness on its own. However, the energy, the godly light, the godly energy that gives life to the creations has a consciousness to it. It's dynamic. It knows what it's doing. It has a mind on its own. It knows that I am giving energy to this table. I am giving energy to this book. I'm giving energy to this animal, right? It has a consciousness to it. It's not just energy, but it's a relationship. It's a soul, as we will see. I want to read text number 2. This is from the Midrash Tehillim, a commentary on a verse of Psalms, a verse of Tehillim that King David says. King David exclaims, "My soul blesses God." Okay, this is the expression that King David expresses himself with. My soul blesses God. So the Midrash explains, why did he feel the need to emphasize that it was his soul that praised God? He told himself, just as the soul fills the body, so does God fill the universe. So King David concluded, let the soul, which possesses the same qualities as God, praise him. We mentioned last week the verse, Mi b'sari echzeh Eloka. From my flesh I see God. We use this very, very often to explain, to understand the relationship between God and this world. We think about the relationship between our soul and our body, and we say we have to compare it. So King David is doing the same thing. King David is saying, why is my soul praising God? Because God enclosed in this world is like the soul in my body. In other words, what's King David telling us over here? He's telling us something very profound. King David is telling us that the same way our souls have a consciousness, is my soul the same as your soul? Is your soul the same as your soul? Each soul is different, has its own DNA. Obviously, we have something in common, right? We're all ultimately we're all the souls of God, but more specifically, right? Each soul is different. We have different personalities. We have different character traits. We have different way of doing things, right? We're all different. So the soul is very personalized for this unique person. So too, this godly energy that energizes every single item, every single piece of creation is unique. It's different. It's like a soul, a unique soul for every single thing has its own soul. So there's a soul in the coffee, and there's a soul in the table, there's a soul in the cat, and there's a soul in the squirrel, there's a soul in the bird. They're all different. Each one is different, has its own consciousness. So, and you know, there's so many different angles we can take this, right? The same way, is there any part of your body which the soul isn't in? Right? The soul is not only in my brain. There's no part of my body which isn't alive. Even my hair, my nails, part of it, they're alive. They grow, right? Right? Michael, even your knuckle, right? Is part of, there's godliness there as well, right? Right? So God is in every part of the body. There's no place where God isn't. You know this, have you ever heard of the town of Chelm? Chelm is the town in Poland that they used to make fun of because people, I guess they were so brilliant there that people used to make fun of them. And they used to make jokes on their expense. So one of the famous Chelm stories is that one evening, it was already nighttime, and someone's walking down the street and he sees his friend Moshe is standing under the light post, and he's searching for something. He says, Moshe, what are you looking for? Oh, I lost my watch, gold watch. I have to look for it. Okay, so two of them start to get down on their knees and they start searching. And some other friends come by, and they all, before you know it, the whole town of Chelm is standing under this bright light in the city, you know, in the main street of town, and they're searching for Moshe's watch. Searching, they can't find it. So then they turn to Moshe. Moshe, tell us exactly, where did you lose it? Where did I lose it? Down there in the alleyway. Well, why are you searching here? He says, over here, there's light. Over there, it's dark. With God, there's no place that God isn't. God's light is everywhere, right? So the same way, the soul includes the body, and every single part of our body is alive. So too, God in this world. Well, I'll tell you more than that. Not only is every part of my body living or alive by the soul, but the movement of every part of my body is a result of the mental soul process being passed down through the nerves, which informs the muscles that cause your hand to move, right? So every movement is also from your soul. So the same is true with the world, right? So there's atoms and there's subatomic particles, and those are unconscious. But the spiritual makeup of the reality is actually conscious. It's dynamic. It's not a lifeless energy that is behind the creation, but it is a conscious soul that is within creation. It's directing the flow of the reality in real time. So every movement as well, like the soul controls the movements of the body, so too God controls the movements of every single detail of creation. I want to read text 3 inside. This is from Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who is known as the previous Chabad Rebbe, one of his beautiful, beautiful Hasidic discourses. He writes as follows: a highly detailed self-awareness of the matter in which our own soul operates within our body will allow us to appreciate that the divine is manifest within every detail of the creation, of the universe, and that each detail exists and is sustained through divine energy. This parallel is expressed in the teaching: just as the soul fills the body, as so too God fills the world, and is expressed in the verse, from my flesh I can perceive the divine. Every sensation and experience of the body, even the most insignificant, is an active expression of the soul. Similarly, even the smallest detail or phenomenon within the universe is actively directed by God. When we develop this awareness, we sense not only the divine providence in everything, but we see divinity clearly wherever we turn. We can literally see the divine exposed. They say a story actually with this, the author of this text, when he was a younger child, who was once walking with his father, and they were having a deep discussion, as they often would have, and they were walking through like the woods behind the town. And as they were talking, he was kind of walking and pulling off a leaf from the tree and kind of playing with it, tearing it apart, taking another leaf, tearing it off. And his father stopped him and says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're just playing with the leaf." He says, "Do you know that there's a divine energy in that leaf? There's a purpose, there's a reason why this is here. If you need to cut down a tree, you can cut down the tree. If it's there for a purpose, you can use it. It's there to be used. But just to play, just to have fun, and just tear leaves off a tree for no reason, what gives you the right?" There's a divine energy in every single thing, right? So where do we see the soul? Do we see the soul in a dead body or in a live body? In the live body, right? When we see a movement, the movements are expressions of the soul. So too, the movements of this world, when things are happening, things are moving, that is an expression of godliness.
I'd like
Yes,
to share
question.
something I remember from a service. And the rabbi said, you cannot go where God is not. And where God is, you are always safe. And I remember that. And
So
this is bringing it back.
So I would add to that essentially there is no place where God is not. It's the awareness, whether we have to have, that God is everywhere. That God is everywhere. So we're always with God, and we'll develop this concept, this idea momentarily. But everything we have to realize is an expression of God. God isn't a distant being, but God is within the world and consciously shaping and directing it. Meaning every, the DNA, the makeup, the nature of everything. Why certain things are heavier, certain things are lighter. You ever heard the question, which is heavier, a pound of stones or a pound of feathers?
Each a pound.
Right, they're each a pound. Right, so why is the feather so light? And why is stone so heavy? Why are certain things this color and that color? And why are certain animals in this climate, and certain animals need that climate, certain fruits? Every single detail of every single thing in the universe. Yes, science will tell you This is science. There's a reason for everything. But then the question is, well, what's the reason for that? The why, the famous why question, right? As a comedian once said, right? I think it was Louis C.K., if you're allowed to mention his name, where he had this thing with his child, right? Why is why does sun, why is it morning? Because the sun came out. But why, right? There's always a million why questions. And ultimately, what's the big answer to the big why question? Because this is what God decided, right? So science brings you to a certain point, but after that, well, why is it that way? So God is the one who is shaping science, right? So every detail is really all from God. Consider that there are approximately, this is what science tells us, that there is approximately 8.7 million unique species on Earth. And every one of these unique species has its own unique characteristics, which differentiates each one from another. Each and every one of these species have their own unique godly energy, like a little soul. But not only that, this soul, this energy, not only is it what gives life but it also guides and shapes its individual fate. What will happen with this? And this is not only with human beings. What will happen with this tree? What will happen with this car? What will happen with this ant? Right? Everything is directed by this soul. It's all planned. It's all from God. Look at text 5. This is a fascinating text. Rabbi Shimon said, each blade of grass has a spiritual force that strikes it and tells it, grow. And the way it is explained in this continuation of text 4, which we don't have inside, that this spiritual force is its soul that also guides and shapes its fate. What will happen with this this blade of grass? Right? I mean, it's mind-boggling. How many blades of grass are there in the world? I don't know, right? I remember a number of years ago, I was in Russia. I was in Moscow. I was actually in a suburb of Moscow. I forgot the name of the suburb. And we were in like a resort, a camp resort. Now I was like a counselor over there. And I had some younger students over there. I was there for a few weeks in the end of the summer. And I remember I was sitting down. They had this large, like big field full of nice, beautiful grass. And I was talking about this text 5. I was like, look around. Just in this field, how many blades of grass? I mean, you can't even count. Hundreds of millions, maybe billions. I mean, I don't know what the number is. I don't know how to estimate, right? Right, and that's just in this one field. We're talking about in the universe, right? I mean, there's no end. There's whatever, right? Each blade of grass has its own little angel, has its own little divine energy that is deciding what will be with this blade of grass. And obviously, it's not only a blade of grass. It's everything. It's every tree. It's every ant. It's every stone. It's everything. Every single thing in the universe. It's not something that we can fathom, right? It's amazing, right? So the more we observe this, we see right in front of our eyes. We are seeing God. We see God. God isn't a distant existence somewhere out there, but it's happening right in front of our eyes. Every movement. You go outside, there's a wind, there's cars, there's nature, and even not nature. I mean, even what people are deciding to do, everything is an expression of God. The same way when you see a person, they're talking, they're acting, they're walking, it's an expression of their soul. Right? Oh, I see your soul. I see you're alive, right? So too, the movement of the world, every detail is an expression of the soul. It's an expression of God. So when we meditate on this idea, it gives us an incredible appreciation for the world, and it opens up us to an experience of life in a way so much more deeper and so much more richer. It's almost like someone who is colorblind. Ever see these videos where people give a gift to someone who's colorblind? They have these glasses, I forget what they're called, that help people who are colorblind see colors. And seemingly, it's like a miracle. It's like it works wonders. Have you ever seen a video like this? Go to YouTube, you can find it. Colorblind. You put on these glasses, and the simcha, the joy on their face. Wow, I see colors. What happens when we see colors? What changes? Nothing changes, but everything changes. Everything becomes alive. It's a whole new dimension. Everything is different. It's the same, right? I've seen everything, but the colors make it alive, right? You can't compare a black and white to a color. A few years ago, we had a house we bought 10 years ago. It was always very dim, very, very dark. Then like 2 years ago, someone said, just change your lights. It's just a simple thing. It's not that expensive. You add these LED lights and it changes everything. And we did that. You change the lights. It's a whole different house. House looks bigger. The light looks nice, right? So people came and was like, did you renovate? Did you paint? What did you do? Nothing. We just changed lights. Adding lights, adding color changes everything. Seeing the world through this perspective, that God is here. It's with us. It's like seeing colors. Suddenly, we see the same thing is seen totally with a new dimension, bursting with new light and new life. And this brings us to two things. It brings us to joy, and it also brings us to comfort. And again, all these ideas that we're talking about is really all information that we should be taking in to use in our meditations. We should be meditating on this. And eventually, like we said, binyan, it builds our new perspective. We see things differently. So first of all, this type of perspective brings to joy. Brings to joy. Imagine that. You see life, how everything is God, everything is an expression of God. God is here with us in every single detail. Every movement is planned by God. Every movement is purposeful, right? It brings you joy. There's an interesting analogy for this, or parable, that the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, says in text 6. And I think a contemporary example of this will be a silent disco. Have you ever been to a silent disco?
No.
Have you heard of the concept?
No.
Okay. I've never been to one either, but they do it today, even like in camps. You could like kind of rent it, you can do it on your own. A silent disco, my understanding of it is, at least, is that instead of playing loud music from amplifier, from big speakers, and everyone hears the music, like you have parties and bars, whatever it is, everyone has headphones, and everyone's listening to the music on their headphone or their earphones, right? And either everyone will listen to the same music or everyone will listen to their own music. But the point is that it's silent, right? If you don't want to hear music, don't put on your headphones. It's quiet, shashtil, as they say. It's quiet. You can go and you can enjoy your hot coffee. But if you want to be, you can go in there, put on the headphones, and you're in a different reality, right? We all know when there's music, a loud music playing, bursting loud, and your joyful music, there's an energy. Right? It creates the atmosphere. It's not the same without it, right? So there can be two people in the same room. One has the headphones on, and one doesn't. Or with the parable of the Baal Shem Tov, one is deaf and one isn't. One hears the music and one doesn't. It's almost like you see the same things, but you're living in a different reality. Right? You can watch the silent disco. Everyone's dancing and singing and they're going wild. They're dancing to the beat. And you're like, what's going on over here? Like, if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know that there's a silent disco going on, you're thinking like, are they Meshuggah? Did they fall on their head? What happened? Right? But meanwhile, just put on the headphones. You'll see what's going on. You'll appreciate what's happening. So this is the analogy used for someone who appreciates and understands how godliness is so real and concrete, so tangible. It's all around us. If you think about that, what are you going to do? You're going to get up on 2 feet and you start dancing. You're going to have a joyful life. It brings a new life into your life. But if someone who doesn't appreciate that, someone doesn't realize that, doesn't recognize that, he looks at you like the person in the silent disco doesn't know what's going on. Why are you so happy? What are you so excited about? Look at text 6. I think he brings that very nice name, text 6. The following parable I heard from a master, my grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov of blessed memory. There was once a talented musician that played beautiful, sweet music. All who heard it were mesmerized by the sweet, pleasurable, blissful sounds. They could not hold themselves back from dancing to the rafters in sheer ecstasy. The closer the people drew to the source of music, the more entranced they became and the more ecstatic their dancing. Just then, a deaf individual came across the scene. Not noticing the musician, he simply observed people dancing wildly and regarded them as crazy. What on earth could make people so ridiculously joyful all of a sudden? He muttered to himself. Now, if he were intelligent, wise, and knowledgeable, he would deduce that they must be dancing to a delightful melody. In fact, contemplating the depth of pleasure they must be experiencing, judging by their response, he would be moved to join them in the delightful dance. The analogy is obvious. So this is what the Baal Shem Tov would say. He says, his followers were known as Hasidim. Hasidic Jews were people who followed in the ways of Baal Shem Tov, and Hasidic Jews were always known to be happy, joyful. And some of the other Jews who were not Hasidic, and they were kind of looking from a distance and looking at the Hasidim and says, why are you so happy? And the Baal Shem Tov is saying, well, if they're so happy, find out why. They must be dancing to music. Maybe you should tune in to that track, to that station, to that channel, and hear that same music. Right? There are many people, unfortunately, I would say, who are perhaps even observant Jews. There are people who are believers, people who are involved in Judaism, in whatever level. But the Judaism is lifeless. Why am I saying it's lifeless? Not because they don't believe in what they're doing, not because they don't believe in the God. Of course they believe in the God. Well, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But the God that they believe in is a lifeless God. It's a distant God. It's a God that is sitting on his throne way up there in heaven, a mighty God, a powerful God. We have reverence and awe and fear of this God, and therefore I do what I have to do. My parents trained me this way. I feel guilty otherwise. I don't want to get punished or whatever the reason is. So I do my prayers. I put on my tefillin. I light my shot. Whatever it is, I can do all the 613 mitzvahs, but it's lifeless. Hasidic teachings teach us that the world, godliness is not lifeless. God is present, very much with us over here, involved in our lives, involved in our in all that we are involved with and all around us. If we tune into this, our service to God is joyful. I always like to tell people, we try to bring the joy back into Judaism, right? Because if we just tune into the song, we're going to dance. It brings joy. It really brings joy. The Tanya kind of brings out this idea a little bit further. He uses an analogy. Imagine you had someone you really looked up to. Maybe a celebrity, a certain singer, a certain actor, or a certain professor, or a certain rabbi, or whatever it is, someone that you really loved. You watch them on television or whatever it is, right? Someone that you really adore. And then one day you're feeling very down, very low, and very depressed, and you're very sad. You're having a bad day. And who knocks on your door? This guy, this man, this woman comes to you and says, hey, Let's have coffee together. Let's talk. Let's take a stroll. Let's spend some time together. You're blown away. I mean, you're like this busy guy. You're up there and you're whatever. And you're talking to me. Like, how do you even know who I am? Like, you even know me? Yeah, I know you. Of course, I was thinking about you. I came to spend time with you. You'd be ecstatic. You'd be very excited. Wow, right? Well, this is what God does to us every single day. God, the great King, comes down to his subjects, who seemingly are very, mortal, finite human beings, and God, infinite God. I mean, what is our connection, right? They say it's like the connection between a cat and the moon. I mean, what does a cat know about the moon? Nothing, right? What do we know about God, right? But God comes and visits us and is with us, spends time with us, very much near and dear to us. That itself should bring joy. Just think about that. We should jump up and start dancing. So that is point number one, right? So thinking about this brings us to joy. Point number two, and again, if you have any questions or comments, we can always discuss. Point number two is that this also brings to comfort, knowing that God isn't distant. God isn't an elusive being, but his loving presence pervades every inch of existence and every moment in our lives. Imagine we have a hug from our mother, from our father, but we don't see them. We don't see them, but we feel them. We know that they are present. Just knowing that they are there gives us comfort, right? If we're going into a surgery, that perhaps we're a little nervous about, we're able to hold someone's hand. We can't see them necessarily, or we know that they're right there behind the door. We know that they're close by. It's not about seeing them. We don't see God physically with our eyes, but we see God through his expression. When we see everything else around us, we see God through his, like we don't see the soul, right? Are we able to see a soul? We can't see the soul. Soul is a spiritual entity. We can't see spirituality, but we see the expression of the soul. We see the body, and that is an expression of the soul. We see the expression of God, and that itself brings us comfort. I want to read text 7, which brings out this point. This is directly from the Baal Shem Tov, the founder, as we said, of the Hasidic movement. Meditate on the fact, text 7, meditate on the fact that the divine presence fills the entire universe and that God's intimate presence is with you constantly. This will allow you to be constantly joyful, realizing and believing with perfect faith that the divine presence is with you, protecting you. Realize that you are gazing at the divine and that God is gazing at you. God can do as he pleases. And in the source of all of the goodness and suffering in the world, for his divinity and sustaining force is within each item of existence. This brings great, great comfort, knowing we are never alone. I think I repeated this experience that I had a number of years ago when I was stuck on an island in Crete, Greece. Do you remember this experience?
Yes.
I could give an hour description of my experience there, but the gist of it was that I was stuck there. I was alone. My partner, who I was supposed to be with, was coming only the next, many hours later. The hotel that I was supposed to stay with was closed. I had to check into this small little inn on the coast, which everything there is on the coast. In Crete, Greece, I had no phone, I had no communication. No one in the world knew where I was. Literally, no one in the world who knows me, besides the innkeeper, knew where I was. And I was sitting there on the balcony of the little inn, the small little Chazarisha inn, but it's in Crete, Greece. You're on the island, so you're on the water. It's beautiful scenery. So I was sitting there on the water. And I was thinking, no one knows where I am. God forbid if something happens to me, no one will even be searching for me. No one will know how to find me. I mean, I literally got scared. For a moment, I got scared. I'm like, it's not like I'm not even in the hotel reservation that I made, right? I'm not even in that hotel. I don't have no form of communication. God forbid what happens, right? Crete, Greece, I mean, it's kind of far away from home. And literally, I was thinking about the idea that God is with you, standing over you, wherever you are. You are never alone. Literally, I felt better. I literally felt a sense of calm. God is with me. God is with you. A person is never alone. And the more you think about this, it's not about understanding it intellectually, but it's about binyan, building your mindset, making this real, right? We know it's real, but do we practice it? Do we feel it? Is it our mindset even when we're not contemplating on it? That takes time. So the more we think about these ideas, the eventual goal is to shift our consciousness, to live with this constant mindfulness of this awareness that God is with us the entire time. It's like living a life of colors. You're not colorblind. It's a life which isn't lifeless. It's a life full of meaning. So that is point number one. As we began this morning, point number one is God is in every detail. God is in every detail, like the soul is in every detail of the body. The soul is expressing itself in every movement of the body. So too, everything that happens in the world, to the minute detail of the grass moving or a leaf falling off the tree, everything is planned by God. God is there, part of it, right? God is in every detail. God is close to us. This brings us joy and this brings us comfort. Let's move on to point number two. Point number two is that everything is here for a reason. Everything is planned by God. There's an order to the chaos. It's not chaotic, even though it seems to be chaotic, perhaps. Everything is planned by God. And in Hebrew, there's a word for this. There's bashert, okay, that's in Yiddish actually. But the Hebrew word for this is hashgacha pratit, which means a divine providence. Every single thing that happens is not by chance, but it is planned by God. Sometimes we think that how does the world run? Have you ever been to I see this often like in science museums. I forget I'm not sure what they're called. Maybe there's a name for it. They have this big contraption with all these metal like tubes and things, and you kind of throw a ball. Have you ever seen this? And the ball like bounces. You know what I'm talking about? It spins and it comes down this little tube and it falls into this and then it circles and it jumps here, right? And it kind of goes on its own. It's just like you throw in the ball and it just goes, it just moves. It's like you turn the switch on and then it just happens. So some say, this is the way God created the world, right? He created the world. He created the device. He put the switch on, it's activated. Now it just runs on its own. You press start, the movie goes, right? It's an hour and a half movie, 90 minutes on its own. The world is happening. God created it. God is the technical, he's the tech guy that if any things happen by mistake, any glitches or he's there to fix it. But for the most part, it runs on autopilot. But the truth is, that's not what the Hashgacha Pratis teaches us. Hashgacha Pratis teaches us that every single thing is planned by God. Look at text number 9. This is from the Psalms from King David as well. He covers the heavens with clouds, prepares rain for the earth, and causes mountains to sprout grass. He gives an animal its food, and as well to the hungry young ravens that call out. Everything which seems to be nature is planned by God, which means God created nature. Nature is something that God deliberately, intentionally chooses that today, this moment, the world should run by nature. But nature is being run by God every single moment. And we see this in our lives. We see sometimes how we see the hand of God. Sometimes we do the same thing twice and we have a different outcome, right? Everything is planned by God. So often do we think that we have everything planned and something goes wrong. And we're like, hey, why did this happen? This is a terrible thing. Or even not terrible. It's out of my routine, right? Well, why did I end up on this block today? Why did I end up here? I wasn't planning on. And I say, wow, hashgacha pratit. It's divine providence that I met you here. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I was supposed to be there. and I forgot, or I came late, or so I ended up over here. It wasn't planned, but I see how it was meant to be that I should meet you, and this should happen. And we all have these stories. We all have these stories. I mean, I remember growing up. I mean, there's endless stories. I was growing up. We used to drive often from Toronto to New York. Living in Toronto, parents in New York, grandparents in New York. We used to travel a few times a year. We had this old station wagon, and I remember one time we were driving, and we get maybe an hour into the trip, and then something goes wrong with the car. I don't remember what it was. We turn off you get off the exit. We're at this gas station. My father's trying to figure out what to do. Maybe there's a mechanic or something. It turns out that we're not able to fix the car. The car is not going to make it to New York. We got to turn around and go back home to Toronto. While we're in the gas station, my father starts talking to the guy there. Turns out he's Jewish. Talking about his Judaism. He never had a bar mitzvah. My father's like, you know what? What better place is there to have a bar mitzvah than in a gas station right off the exit? Well, that's what we did. We have a picture till today we have in our house. My father put on tefillin with him, first time in his life, put on tefillin by our station wagon in the gas station. My father told him afterwards, and he told us, till today he tells us, we were planning on being in New York. If our car wasn't working, if God did not want us to get to New York, he could have let us stay at home. No, God wanted us to drive an hour, meet this guy, put on tefillin, and drive back. We don't generally know the reasons why things happen. Sometimes we are privy, God, gives us, perhaps a reason for it, but truthfully, it's really beyond the scope of our understanding because there's so many things that are happening every moment. We don't understand what the reasons for it, but every single thing is planned by God. I want to show you a little video. This is a cute video. It's like a children's video that we had growing up that kind of depicts this idea of even things that seemingly are going wrong are really hashgacha pratit. They're really planned by God.
School. If only that light had been green, maybe I would make the bus.
No battle. Is that what we learned in class?
Oh, hello, Rabbi Byers. I haven't seen you since you taught us in 4th grade.
And do you remember what we learned? I know, Battle. You must be upset about missing the bus, huh?
Yeah, that light wouldn't turn green.
But Battle, what about Hashgacha Pratis? You know that even making buses on time is all dependent upon what Hashem has in store for us. You know, Hashem has a master plan for everything in the world. And Hashgacha Pratis is always working, making sure that everything that happens is according to Hashem's plans. There's no such thing as coincidence. Hashem has designed everything that takes place, well, from the leaves that are fluttering in the wind to our meeting here today. Well, you have a minute? I want to tell you a story.
Well, the bus route takes longer to get to school than it would take me to walk, so I have a few minutes.
Good. Once, the Rebbe Rashab and his son, the Rebbe Rayatz, were traveling. On the way, they saw two Chassidim, Reb Peretz and Reb Mendel, on their way home from the town of Lubavitch and reviewing a mimer they had heard from the Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab turned to his son and said, "You should know, for 5,661 years, 9 months, 11 days, 15 hours, and so many minutes, this place has waited for Peretz and Mendel to sit here and say Divrei Torah. Sometimes we know what Hashem plans, but sometimes we don't. Yet a chassid is always happy and calm because he knows that Hashem is always watching over us. And anything that happens, well, that's Bahashgacha Pratis. You know? Bahashgacha Pratis, I think you can help me. This letter has to get to Union Street. You see this address here? Do you think you can drop it off on the way to Yeshiva?
Yeah, but I have to leave right now.
Okay, thanks a lot. And have a great day.
Hey, how you doing, my man? Everything okay?
I'm looking for this address and I can't find it.
You can't find it? Well, hey, I'm a policeman. It's my job to know these things. I'll help you out.
Boy, is this Hashgacha Pratis.
What's that?
No.
Let's see. Well, you got 1374, you got 1376. Okay, I see this doesn't have a number on it, but this must be 1378 right here. Okay, why don't we go check that out for you? Okay. Come on. 1370, all right, this should be it. How are you, sir?
Okay, everything all right?
Oh, everything is fine. Yeah, actually, I was just helping out my little buddy here. I believe he has a parcel for you.
A letter from Rabbi Barris.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
By the way, aren't you the officer that helped me a couple of weeks ago? My car stalled late at night?
Right, right. Oh, that was you over on Eastern Parkway and Brooklyn Avenue over here.
Right.
I remember. How's the car?
Oh, the car's fine,
Oh.
but it's really nice to see you.
Likewise. I'm glad the car's running well now.
Well, I really wanted to thank you again for your help, but I was so flustered that night I just didn't get an opportunity to, get your name at all.
Oh, well, the name is Brooks, but, as they say in the trade, I was just doing my job. Okay, listen, take care.
Oh, that's nice. What a nice Hashgacha Pratis.
Oh, that's the second time I heard that expression in the last 2 minutes. What does that mean?
It's Hashgacha Pratis, and it means divine providence. Everything in the world is planned by God. Things don't happen just by chance. It's God that brings it all about. You see, because you helped that boy find my address, I got the opportunity to thank you personally for your help.
I see. Okay, now I understand. Oh, okay, well, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You have a good day.
Thanks a lot. You too.
All the best.
Okay. Hey, Benji.
Hey,
how are you,
Mr. Brooks,
Benji?
how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Hey, you're just the person I wanted to see.
Yeah, what for?
We have to discuss the permit for the street closing for your school.
Okay.
Boy, this is really hashgacha practice.
Huh?
Okay. Okay, cute video, a cute video. We learned, this is I used to watch when I was kids. The idea was that everything that went wrong, he missed the light, he missed the bus, he met his teacher, he couldn't find the address, he met the policeman. He was able to thank him for his service. He met the school, administrator. Everything that happens is there for a reason. It is all planned by God. And this brings us to the third point, which I think in a way is maybe the greatest aha moment of this discussion. And that is that not only is everything planned by God, but everything that happens is part of a divine master plan of creation and plays an indispensable role in the ultimate purpose of existence. Meaning not only is everything on purpose, but everything is for the purpose of the entire creation of the universe, which means one little detail that happens to us, one small little thing, it's not just there's a purpose in that, there's a reason why that happens, but this is somehow is tied in to the general picture and the general purpose of all of creation. In text 11, it's a little bit of a longer text. I'm not going to read the whole text. I just want to read starting from the third paragraph. Beyond all of that, however, each of these particular movements is significant for the overall purpose of creation. Through the combination and synthesis of all the myriad particles occurrences involving countless millions of species and subdivisions that exist within all of the four kingdoms, the sublime divine intent that underpins all of creation is consummated. Not only is every feature of every entity divinely orchestrated, it plays an indispensable role in the divine purpose of creation. This seemingly is a radical idea that is almost unfathomable. How can we wrap our heads around the idea that everything that happens in the world, even the smallest seemingly insignificant movement of blades of grass, is directed by the divine hand for a cosmic purpose and is integral to the overall purpose of God's creation. Looking at your yard, you see the flowers, you see the grass. Every movement somehow is not just an individual movement, but part of this larger purpose of creation. So an analogy that you see on page 98 used for this is the idea of a picture, especially a digital picture. Today that we have digital pictures, it's very easy to understand this, right? We know every picture is made up of hundreds or thousands of pixels, right? Tiny, the higher the quality, the more sharp the picture is, the smaller the pixels are, right? And therefore the more accurate it is, right? But if you were able to take out just one pixel, look at that pixel on its own, what do you see? Nothing. Nothing, right? It's like a puzzle, right? You have a 2,000 piece puzzle, beautiful picture of scenery, of waterfalls or whatever it is, right? Take one piece of that puzzle. What do you see? Nothing. Just some lines, some color. You don't see a picture. It seems insignificant. It's only significant if you put all the pixels together in the right order. Do you see it? Well, imagine if the entire universe was one large picture. Not only that, the entire history of time from beginning of creation till today was part of one large picture. And we're able to put that 3D picture of time and space all together. And every little second, millisecond, and every space, everything that happens is part of this one large picture. We say, wow, but I see everything. I see my whole life. I see my whole surroundings, everything involved around me, I see. Yeah, but you still don't see 99.9% of the entire picture, right? There's certain artists that you see that they do art, and you only really see what the art is really about only towards the end, right? But imagine they took one stroke, two strokes of the paintbrush. You don't know what they're going to draw. So what we see is only one little pixel of the massive picture that God is drawing, right? So of course we can't fathom, we can't really wrap our heads around this concept, but this is something the Torah teaches us. The Torah teaches us that every moment, every movement of every piece of creation is part of this cosmic big plan of creation. It's all there for a reason. And thinking about this, a few things come to mind. First of all, we start to utilize and we realize the significance. We start to we realize that every moment is precious. Every moment is part of this picture. It's there for a reason. It's there for a purpose. And every occurrence that happens in our lives is there for a purpose, a greater purpose. And we have to use out every moment. They say that in earlier times, in ancient times, people lived, look in the Torah, Adam, Eve, right? They lived for hundreds of years. But God cut down the length of life, 120, 180, right? What is the reason for this? Because when people have so many years, imagine I live for 500 years. I'll deal with it in 20 years. I'll deal with it in 100 years, right? I have so many years, right? They wasted time. They really did not use out. They didn't utilize every moment properly. But if we realize that every moment is building this picture, every moment is part of this. It's not just an individual, independent moment. This moment is part of this large portrait. There's a purpose in it. And every movement is part of this large purpose. So there's meaning in everything. And then this kind of also, we understand that everything is for a purpose. Nothing is by accident. There's every action that we take is purposeful, is there for a reason.
What about the fact that we are the captains of our own ship? We can choose right or we can choose wrong.
That's a great question. Lynn is asking, how does it fit with the idea of our own free will?
Yes.
Great question. Before I get to that, and because that's a discussion kind of for itself, but that's a great question. I want to show the final video, which is a short meditation by Rabbi Leibel Wolf, and then we'll go back to perhaps discuss Lynn's question about how this works with the idea of free will. So let me get the video on, if I get this correct. Right over here, I believe it is.
Life isn't random. There is a subtle cause and effect relationship that operates in your life. And that cause and effect relationship relates to a master plan that the master planner ingrained within your soul and within the world. Our task is to recognize the turnings in life and be able to choose freely those that correspond to the master plan. Gently close your eyes. Just become aware of the silence in the room. Become aware of the emptiness of the space, and that you, as a ball of small energy, occupies a place in that space. Become aware of your life. Go back to the beginning, early childhood. Observe the facets that seem to be recalled quickly about your childhood. Then your teenagehood. What incidents come quickly to mind? And adulthood. The transition within and between are catalysts that project you into the next phase of your life. The catalysts aren't arbitrary. Hashem places these catalysts into your life to keep nudging you towards a destiny, your personal destiny. Be aware that life is not random, but your capacity to reach your destiny quickly, clearly, painlessly, is part of your free choice, how you respond to the catalysts of life. Hashem imbues your life with purpose, but the way that you choose allows that purpose to be expressed optimally or less optimally. There's meaning to your life. The way you choose leaves footprints in the sands of time and in the world itself. Practice mindfully how to exercise choice so that your purpose overlaps with Hashem's destiny for you. And that way you achieve fulfillment, life's meaning, in a way that is painless, optimized, and in keeping with the intent of your reincarnation, why you, your soul, your innate plan, plays a significant role in the world. You are special. God has embedded specialness, individuality in your life. Live your purpose.
As you saw in the meditation, one of the ideas of the answer to Lynn's question is that the way we react to what happens to us is something that we have the choice to. But the point is that everything that happens is planned by God and is there for a purpose. So just the takeaway from today's discussion is A, God is within every detail of the world, and we are constantly in his presence, which brings us to joy and comfort. The idea that everything that happens is directed intentionally by God, which can help us live with adversity and overcome struggle. And the third point is that everything that happens is part of the ultimate divine purpose of creation, which lends every moment in our life absolute purpose, because every moment is part of, it can be more purposeful when it is part of the ultimate purpose of the entire creation. So this is a perspective shift. These are, like we said, hisbonenus, which means binyan, to build our and shape our mindset. And the more we think about these ideas, these concepts, the more real they become, and hopefully we will be able to live life this way. And especially when we do have a struggle in life, the more we think about this, it could help us overcome that struggle internally. And like we said last time, practice, and then when you're done practicing, you practice a little more. So that's today's discussion. Next week, we have a little bit of a change of schedule, and this was originally in the original schedule. If you notice when you reserved online, that the class is not going to be Tuesday, it's going to be Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday morning at 10:30 and Wednesday night at 7:30. And I could invite you here as well. We have a family simcha. Our son is having an upsharn, third birthday party. We cut his hair for the first time over here at the shul at 4:45, going probably till about 6 or 6:30. So if you can't come 4:45, you can come later as well or earlier. And you're all welcome to join us then next week over here on Tuesday. So we'll give the class on Wednesday.